Thinking about finally committing to a low-carb lifestyle? The truth is that deciding to get serious about losing weight and transforming your health is a big commitment, especially when you finally realize that this is a commitment for life and not just another crash diet. That's why in today's episode, I wanted to get personal and talk about a few of the really big things that, looking back, I wish I would have known when I first started my low-carb journey. And these aren't the basic things like what should your macros be or what you can eat and can't eat, but really some of the other challenges that maybe would have been easier had I known better how to mentally prepare. And honestly, they're good reminders no matter where you are in your journey. So whether you're just thinking about getting started or you're already committed, this is the episode where we're going to get real. Welcome to the Ditch the Carbs podcast, brought to you by Thinlicious. I'm your host, Ruth Sukup, and here we'll talk about everything from the science of weight loss and metabolic flexibility to practical tips for making your health a priority in the midst of a very busy life. It's the perfect blend of insightful education, practical application, and good old-fashioned motivation. So buckle up, friend, because it's about to get real. Hey there, and welcome back to the Ditch the Carbs podcast. Once again, my name is Ruth Sukup, and I'm the founder of Thinlicious and the Thin Adapted System, as well as the New York Times bestselling author of 7 books. And I'm also a 40-something-year-old woman who knows really well what it's like to struggle with your weight and with eating well and getting healthy. And if this is your first time listening to this podcast, then at some point you may want to go back and listen to the episode where I share all the details of my own weight loss journey. It's called The Simple Changes I Made to Lose 40 Pounds and Actually Keep It Off. But that will just give you a good overview of where I've been and how I got to here. But today I want to take that story one step further and share honestly with you some of the things that I know now that looking back probably would have made things a whole lot easier for me. Because as one of my favorite students once said, sometimes you just don't know until you know, you know? And my hope in being honest about my own struggles with this lifestyle, you will be both encouraged and empowered to make some healthier choices in your own life. Because the reality is that transforming your health is a big deal and a big commitment, but it's also a journey. It's one that won't always go smoothly. And so you have to be mentally prepared for some of those bumps along the way. You've got to be ready to keep going, even when you have setbacks, even when you hit a plateau. You've got to be prepared for when people around you aren't totally supportive for whatever reason. So buckle up, because I'll tell you right now, it's not all sunshine and roses, guys. But before we dive in, I do want to make one very important announcement. It's that the doors for TAS, our main program here at Thinlicious, just opened up today. And that is a really big deal. In fact, if you already know that you want in the program this time around, I recommend just hitting pause on this podcast for a second and then going to thinlicious.com/enroll and getting signed up right now so that you can be sure to get a spot. We only open up a limited number of seats each quarter, and I have a feeling they are going to go fast this time around. That said, if this is your first time listening and you're not sure what TAS, which stands for Thin Adapted System, actually is, or whether you would want to enroll, don't worry, this will be a really great episode to listen to. And I'll make sure to share a little bit more at the end about the program and how it works and why it's so amazing, because it really, really is. So that is the big news today, guys. Enrollment for TAS is now open. Go to thinlicious.com/enroll. But don't wait to do it, because the doors will only be open for a few short days. Okay. So with that out of the way, let's get into what I really want to talk about today, which is all the things that I wish I would have known and maybe have been a little more prepared for when I first started my low carb journey. Because even though I've had a lot of success and I was able to lose more than 40 pounds and keep it off for more than 2 years now following this lifestyle, and even though I am now so incredibly passionate about it that I started a whole program and a podcast dedicated to helping other people see these same kind of results. It wasn't all just a walk in the park, right? There were plenty of low points along the way and probably more moments of frustration than I'd like to admit. And honestly, that's probably the first thing that I wish I would have been more cognizant of, and that maybe I would have had somebody to remind me of on a regular basis. that is that sustained weight loss takes time. That's what it is, right? Sustained weight loss takes time. And not only that, it does not happen in a straight line, even when we want it to. There will be days when you are up a little bit and days when you are down a little bit. And that is totally normal too, because what you're actually looking for is a line that trends downward over time. Because I don't know about you, but I am 100% an instant gratification kind of person. My team actually has this kind of ongoing joke that by the time I ask them for something, I already wanted it yesterday, right? They're like, oh, when is this due? Yesterday. But it's true. I hate waiting. I am the kind of person, I just want to take action and I want to do the things and I want to be gung-ho and I want to see results right now. And that's literally the approach that I had always taken to dieting and trying to lose weight, and probably why I wasn't very successful, because I would find the latest fad diet, lose weight quick approach, right? I'd look for the thing that was going to help me lose the most amount of pounds in the shortest amount of time. And I would go all in on cutting calories and starving myself and drinking all the water and working out, and all with the thought that I would just be able to quickly shed the extra pounds and move on. And sometimes I'd lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds, but it was usually by making myself totally miserable. And then finally, I couldn't take it anymore. So I'd go right back to eating all the things and gain all the weight right back, right? Like, raise your hand if that was that was you too. That's all of us. But when I finally hit my breaking point and I realized that approach just wasn't working, right? They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Like, clearly at some point I had to realize, like, Ruth, this is not working for you. And what I realized is that I needed to make a lifestyle change. It had to be a lifestyle change. It couldn't just be another fad diet. But even though I knew in my head, I had decided I'm going to change my lifestyle. This is going to be a long-term thing. I still struggled with not being very patient, because that's just not my personality to be patient. And honestly, I know I'm not the only one who struggles with this, because I hear it all the time from our clients. And the thing is, like, even though in hindsight, losing 40 pounds in 6 months sounds like it happened relatively fast, and it did. I mean, 40 pounds in 6 months is awesome, right? Raise your hand if 6 months from now you would be happy that you were 40 pounds less than you are today. We all would, right? And that sounds fast when you look back on it. But in the moment, in the day-to-day, it did not feel like it was happening fast. It felt painfully, excruciatingly, frustratingly slow. Because what happened for me, and I will say this is pretty typical, very normal for our clients as well, is that I had some initial fast success where I lost the first 10 pounds or so pretty quickly. It just sort of dropped off in the first 2 weeks. And I was like, yes, this is awesome. I will be skinny in no time. I can totally do this. This is so great, right? But now I know, now that I know what I know that those first 10 pounds were basically water weight, and not that water weight isn't real weight or that it doesn't count. It does, right? Trust me, losing 10 pounds of anything feels awesome. And that water weight affects you as well. But water weight comes and goes. It fluctuates. It can depend on your cycle and even on what you're eating. And carbohydrates, when you eat a lot of carbohydrates, they literally make you retain water. So when you stop eating them, as soon as you stop eating carbohydrates, that water is going to flush right out of you. And that's awesome, right? That's awesome. But for those of us who have more than 10 pounds to lose, that's not enough. Because then you got to start burning through all the excess fat. And that is where the frustration starts to happen, because fat, not surprisingly, comes off a lot slower than water. And so let me say this too. It doesn't mean that it's not working anymore. It just means that you have to be more patient. And honestly, as I've thought about this and as I was preparing this episode, it's almost like having that fast water weight can almost be like a detriment, because it sets you up for disappointment later on when the fat loss is more slow and steady. But I think if I had been more aware of the slowdown from the beginning, right? If I had known to expect that and not to just get my hopes up when the first 10 pounds came off really fast, and also to not focus so much on the day-to-day, but the results over an extended period of time, I think I would have had fewer moments of frustration. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just impatient. But that's really the first thing that I wish I would have known, that sustained weight loss takes time and it doesn't happen in a straight line. The second thing that I wish that I had been more prepared for, this is going to make me sound like a bad wife, but it was the fact that my husband would lose weight way faster and easier than I did, even though he was not nearly as diligent or as committed. And I'm not going to lie here, guys. That could be pretty damn annoying sometimes. And I'm laughing because this is something that I actually hear a lot from the clients in our program, because our recipes are A, delicious, and B, food that is actually intended to feed your whole family. Our recipes feed a crowd. And so we give you food that your whole family will happily eat because it's just delicious. I just got back from vacation and my kids were craving me to go back to mom's home cooking because we ate out so much over vacation, right? They love the food. And so we see a lot of spouses benefit from, I guess, what I can only call the residual effect of our program. They, by default, start eating fewer carbs because they're eating the Thinlicious way a lot of time. And they end up losing a lot of weight too, sometimes even faster and easier than you. And that's frustrating when you feel like you're the one that's doing all the work, right? And so in my case, my husband was actually also trying to lose weight. We were doing this together. And so he was happy to go low carb, but his weight just came off so much faster and easier, even though he cheated a lot more than me. He would drink beer, he'd eat ice cream, and sometimes he'd just be like, yeah, I'm just going to eat whatever I want today. I'm going to take the day off. And yet he kept losing weight. Seriously, so annoying. And it's not that I wasn't happy for him and a success. I genuinely was. Like, I feel like that's one thing with my husband and I. We cheer each other on. And we also have this saying, you do you, boo, right? Like that's it, right? We're each other's biggest cheerleaders, but also don't try to control each other. And that is the secret of our happy marriage. But it wasn't that I wasn't happy for him. I just wanted more success for myself. But now that I look back on it and I can laugh, but I realized that all the comparison I was making wasn't really very helpful or very constructive. It wasn't a competition between me and my husband, at least not technically, because it's just not that helpful to compare my results as a 45-year-old woman to my husband, who is a man with a man body that tends to just lose weight easier. Because the fact is, women in general, but especially women over 40, have the hardest time losing weight. The deck is literally stacked against us because we've got all these hormone issues going on. We've got hormonal changes that are happening. We've got a higher percentage of body fat, less lean muscle mass, right? Like all these things that are stacked against us that make it, we are the segment of the population that has the absolute hardest time. So sometimes when people are like, oh, well, I'm not a woman over 40. Will your program work for me too? Well, yes, it literally works for everybody. But the fact that it works for women over 40 is what makes it really special and really great, that it deals with all of these other things, because otherwise nothing else works. But, when you come back to the comparison thing, comparison is just toxic no matter what or who you're comparing yourself to, right? And what I realize very clearly now also, because I get to work with thousands of amazing women in our program, is that every body is different. Our bodies are amazingly complex systems, and there's so much at play. There's so much variation. And knowing what I know now, I really wish that I would have focused a little bit more just on my own journey and accepting it as it came instead of being annoyed that it seems so much easier for my husband. So that is the second thing. The third thing I definitely wish I would have known is that you will probably feel worse, maybe even much worse, before you feel better. I'm just saying, because when you cut out carbs, guys, there's a lot of adjusting that your body has to do. And I had heard of the keto flu, right? And all the research, I had heard of this thing that people call the keto flu, but until I experienced it, I didn't really get it, like how you feel. And I worried that something was wrong, right? Like I would just have these like episodes, like my blood sugar would plummet and I would feel really nauseated and like get really hot. And I craved sugar like nothing else in the beginning. I'd have headaches. And I realize now that I was detoxing. And for the first few weeks, even though I wasn't super hungry, because I was eating plenty of food, I just had no energy. I was exhausted. I was just so physically tired from this, like all this changes that my body were going through. And looking back, all of those not so great physical adjustments, they were pretty short-lived, right? It was just a couple of weeks that I had those feelings. And then once my body flipped the switch and I became thin adapted, it was literally like a miracle. I went from being completely spent at the end of my workday to all of a sudden just having endless amounts of energy. I was cooking dinner and I was going to the grocery store and I was cleaning the house and whatever else. I felt like a new person. It felt so good. And so now I know that whatever discomfort I experienced was totally temporary, right? It was totally temporary. And I also know that it was totally worth it. And I would do it over again 1,000,000 times over. So if you're going through that or you're about to go through that, let me just tell you, you can do it. You can do it and it's worth it. The fourth thing that I really, really wish I would have known sooner is that when you hit a plateau, you have got to mix things up a little bit. And let me clarify this, because I don't mean like the scale doesn't move for a couple of days or you notice some normal weight fluctuation. That is not a plateau. That is just part of losing weight, right? It's not a straight line. There's going to be a few ups and a few downs. But as long as you're seeing that kind of downward trend over time, that's a good thing. But what I'm talking about is when you're diligently doing all the things, but you've flatlined, right? The scale hasn't budged in months. And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong because I'm doing all the things that I was doing. And honestly, that's exactly what happened to me about 3 or 4 months into my weight loss journey. I had been doing really good. I was, going down, down, down. I had lost about 30 pounds, but no matter how diligently I stuck to what had been working for me, I just couldn't lose any more weight. And I'm telling you, like I said, my husband would cheat all the time. I never cheated. And that's when I would start to get really frustrated. I'm like, how can you just go out and eat ice cream one day and you're still fine? And I'm doing all the things and I'm just stuck here. And this went on for, at least a month, I think closer to 6 weeks. And it was so frustrating. And I felt like I was doing everything right. And so the longer that I stayed stuck, the more frustrated I got. And honestly, that is really about the time where I started doing a lot more research. I had done some research up to that point, but then I really wanted to dig deeper. Like I wanted to understand the science behind low carb eating and what was I doing wrong? What was I missing? I wanted to see what I was missing because clearly something was not working anymore. And I did. As I started to dig into the science of weight loss and low carb eating, I started to see that there were some things that I had been missing and missing the mark on, because up to that point, I had basically just been following kind of the traditional keto diet. But as a vegetarian, or technically I was a pescatarian. So I did eat fish, but not much, right? I mostly didn't really eat much meat or fish or anything, or any meat or fish. And like a lot of people on the traditional keto diet, it worked for a while. And this is something that I actually hear a lot, right? Like, oh, I tried keto, but it didn't really work for me. And so what happens with a traditional keto diet is that it'll work for a while, and then you'll hit that same plateau that I did. And one of the big things that I realized after I actually started doing a lot of research is that I was not getting nearly enough protein, and probably because I was a vegetarian. But I also realized that the best way to get high quality, nutrient dense protein was to actually start eating meat again. And so after 28 years as a vegan / vegetarian / pescatarian, I've done all three, I went back to meat. And you know what else? It made a huge difference. Huge difference. The last 10 pounds came off pretty fast. And I hit my goal weight almost 6 months to the day after I had started. And guys, I'm not here to debate whether you should or shouldn't be a vegetarian, or whether you should or shouldn't eat meat. I've done a blog post on that. You can go check it out on the Thinlicious vlog. I'm not saying that meat is the answer to everything, but in my case, it definitely was the answer, because I had been very protein deficient. And also I was actually eating too much of some other foods, which is what brings me to my next thing. Don't just eat cheese. and don't get me wrong, I love cheese, right? I like really love it. I love the fathead dough that's mostly made out of cheese. I love cream cheese and low carb cheesecake and pork rinds with queso and cauliflower mac and cheese and extra cheesy omelets and all the cheesy things. Give me all the cheese. But what I know now is that there is a limit to how much cheese your body can handle, especially if that's the bulk of what you're eating. And I wish that I would have known that, because while I still do enjoy cheese very much, I work a little harder now at finding a better balance with other foods, eating a whole lot more meat and a whole lot more fish and low glycemic fruits and vegetables and plenty of healthy fat. And remember what I said about mixing things up. If you find that your body is not responding well to something, you're struggling with constipation, or you've hit a plateau, then cheese and dairy is probably one of the first things that you should consider cutting back on, just to see what happens. Or better yet, add more goat cheese. Just to add something different. Goat cheese is high in MCT oil, which is really good for you. Great for your gut health, great for your mitochondria. So that is the fifth thing that I wish I would have known, that there is such a thing as too much cheese. The next thing that I wish I would have known, and maybe this is more of a mindset or maybe just my own personality thing, but it is that perfection does not matter nearly as much as consistency. Because like I said, when it comes to diets, I am the kind of person who likes to go all in. That basically, when it comes to anything, I have a bit of an obsessive personality. I'm not going to lie, but I go all in. I get super gung ho. I do all the things, and I tend to go a little bit overboard. But then I get overwhelmed and I start to lose my focus and my motivation and my willpower, and then I give up. I want to be perfect, but I can only maintain that for a few days. And what I've realized in hindsight, and what I wish that I would have learned a lot earlier, is that consistency is so much more important than just doing everything perfectly 100% of the time and trying to check off every box. And that is hard for me because I like to check off boxes. But the thing is, you've also got to be able to live your life. And so now my motto is, big goals never happen all at once. They are only the result of small steps taken consistently over time. I say it all the time. You probably heard me say it on this podcast. You'll probably hear me say it many more times. And so what I started to do was to give myself permission to not be perfect, but instead to make the best possible choices in any given situation. And that meant for me that sometimes we'd go out to eat or we'd hang out with my friends and my macros would be a little bit off. But instead of letting that derail me as it probably would have in the past, I would actively work to praise myself, right? To congratulate myself for making the best choice in that situation. Because over time, those small choices add up to a lot of big results. And honestly, I see this a lot in our program too. There are a lot of people walking around the world with perfectionist tendencies who get super stressed when they don't know an exact serving size or they find themselves in a situation that they can't totally control. And so it's almost like they go off the rails, right? It's either I control everything or I control nothing. And I get it because at one point I was the same way, but not anymore because perfection does not win this race. Consistency is what will win this race. And the seventh and final thing that I wish I would have known when I started was that other people won't always get it. And they won't always be super supportive either. And that is actually okay. I had a lot of people tell me that keto wasn't healthy and that I was ruining my health and that I was just going to gain all the weight right back. I had friends who got weird after I did lose a noticeable amount of weight, almost like they resented it because they had stayed the same. And then I had other friends who flat out told me, keto Ruth isn't fun, Ruth. Mostly because I cut way back on my drinking and partying, and I was no longer convincing everyone in the neighborhood to do Fireball shots every time we got together. Do you know how much sugar is in Fireball? It's a lot. So I don't do Fireball shots anymore. I stick to tequila instead. But I had a lot of support, I will say. So even though there were some people that weren't supportive, I did have a lot of support from the people that really mattered to me. My husband was and is my biggest cheerleader, and hopefully he would say that about me for him. But we also had a lot of really great friends who actually embraced the low carb lifestyle right along with us. And that was pretty cool. A lot of, we have a great friend group in our neighborhood, and a lot of them also do low carb. And so now we tend to organize our gatherings around food and drinks that all of us can enjoy. And it's pretty great. And it makes things really easy. And knowing what I know now, I would say that finding people who do get it and who are cheering you on is so key for being able to make your changes stick. There is something to be said about strength in numbers and the support of an awesome community. And honestly, that is why I love our Thinlicious community so much. Because if you're in our Facebook group, or especially in TAS, or if you've done one of our quarterly challenges, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is awesome. That's second to none. Our community rocks. So even if you're not finding the support that you need from the people around you in real life for whatever reason, and I know that that can be really hard and really challenging, know that you can find it online in a community like ours, which is honestly just one more really good reason to join TAS this week. So let's talk about that. I know this is getting long, so I'm gonna have to wrap things up, guys. But like I mentioned way at the beginning of this episode, enrollment for TAS opened up this morning. And truly, friend, if you are serious about wanting to transform your life by transforming your health, if you are ready to have more energy and ready to get your metabolism working again and ready to dramatically reduce inflammation and to reverse insulin resistance and to heal your gut and potentially even get off medication, then I promise you, there is no better way to do that than by joining TAS. It is such a good program. I can't even say enough good things about it. I mean, I know I'm biased. I did create it after all, but honestly, I created it out of my own experience. It is everything that I wish that I would have had access to years ago, because it would have saved me so much pain and so much frustration and so much struggle. It is just so comprehensive and jam-packed with both the practical tools that you actually need to succeed, right? Things like all the meal plans. We've got 12 weeks of meal plans. We've got shopping lists. We've got it all figured out and all sorted out for you to make it really easy. We help you with meal prep. There's a meal prep guide every week so that you can save time during the week by doing some prep on the weekends. All those kind of things are very practical, and they make sticking with it feel really doable. We've got an eating out guide. So we have clients who have done nothing but eat out the entire time. So it's not that you have to cook, but if you are cooking, we have lots of ways to make it easier. But then that's not all, right? Like if we were just giving you the practical tools, that would be great, but it wouldn't be enough. Then there's our physician-led education that really takes a deep dive into the science. It's co-taught by myself and Dr. Edie, our physician advisor. And that is designed to help you understand the underlying science behind our program in such a comprehensive way that you can't unknow it, right? You can not stick to the program, but you won't be able to not know what's happening inside your body. And that empowerment helps you to make those permanent changes. But then on top of that, we have this ongoing support and coaching and accountability, and our coaches are awesome and our community is awesome. And so you can meet together in accountability groups, and those are the things that will actually allow you to stay on track, right? Because our coaches can troubleshoot with you when you hit a plateau. They can help you brainstorm ways to deal with situations that you might be in. They can encourage you when you feel like you just need a pep talk. And that is a big deal. Plus, they're just always like sharing new things and sharing new tips and going, hey, what about this? Have you tried this? It really is the total package. And you can enroll now. Like I said, doors open today, but doors are only open for a few days. And that means that if you are ready to get started, you got to get going, right? Go to thinlicious.com/enroll, get in there, get started, get going. It's so good. You won't regret it. I promise. And that is all I have for you today. But I am going to be back on Thursday with a very special guest, our very own Thinlicious physician advisor and massive fan favorite, Dr. Edie Wadsworth. We are going to be talking specifically about mindset and how to get your head in the right place when you're trying to get healthy and make other big changes in your life. And I promise you, it is going to be amazing because Dr. Edie is awesome. Everybody loves her. You can't know her and not love her. So don't miss this episode. It's going to be so good. In the meantime, be sure to head over to thinlicious.com/enroll to get started with TAS. And guys, I will see you inside the program. See you soon.